What's going on, Giants fans? Back at it with another video here tonight. And in this video, I'm going to discuss FanFest. I'm going to go over the unofficial depth chart. It's going to be a lot of fun. Before I go any further, make sure to check us out on all social media platforms on Big Blue Avenue at Instagram, Twitter, and our YouTube channel where all of our videos go up. We really appreciate all the support we've gotten. I just put up a video the other day on Saquon Barkley returning to practice and defending Joe Judge. So I'm really looking forward to this one, though. This is going to be a lot of fun. As some of you know, I did attend FanFest on Wednesday evening. It was a lot of fun. We saw Joe Judge. We saw Saquon Barkley. We saw Eli Manning, Daniel Jones. A couple former Giants were there, too. Ahmad Bradshaw and Mario Manningham. Sean O'Hara was reporting on the sideline. And I got a nice close-up look at Bob Papa and Carl Banks. And the tailgate was really nice. A lot of good content creators there. Got to link up with. So, yeah, it was a lot of fun, FanFest. I highly recommend going if you're a Giants fan, if they have another one next year. But some news that I want to go over, some FanFest takeaways that I have. So, in case you weren't there, I've got you covered. So, early on in the day on Wednesday, the Giants released defensive tackle R.J. McIntosh and waived wide receiver Derek Dillon. McIntosh was claimed by the New Orleans Saints on Thursday. So I believe this video is coming out on Friday, so that will have happened yesterday. So, yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see how McIntosh holds up with the New Orleans Saints. I think that's a better opportunity for him there. This is a former 2018 draft pick that didn't really pan out here. I believe we took him in the 5th round, never really saw the field. Was stuck behind guys like Damon Snacks Harrison and Dalvin Tomlinson, Dexter Lawrence as well. So he really couldn't catch his footing here with the Giants. But in 18 career games, McIntosh had 18 tackles, 3 QB hits, and 2 sacks. And he has not seen the field since 2019. He was a healthy scratch in all 16 games last season for the New York Giants. Derek Dillon was waived as well. He was an undrafted rookie free agent receiver that we picked up last year in 2020. And the Giants, in the other transacting move, they signed defensive tackle Elijah Qualls. He is a former 6th-round pick by the Philadelphia Eagles back in 2017. So I don't know if he's going to do much. He might just be a camp body to replace McIntosh. We will see what happens. But McIntosh, best of luck in New Orleans. Another move, Cale Garrett was waived, and I got this notification as soon as I hit the seats right before practice. I was a little surprised by this because those of you who follow this channel and watch all the videos, I did a video on Cale Garrett that he could potentially make this 53-man roster as the 4th inside linebacker before they started using Carter Coughlin in that role. So now Cale Garrett has been waived. For defensive tackle Willie Henry. Willie Henry was a 4th-round pick by the Baltimore Ravens in the 2017 draft, so the Giants got a couple 2017 guys. This Willie Henry guy was released by the Eagles in late July. I believe he was picked up in May. Eagles released him last month. So, yeah, that was a little surprising. The Giants pick up 2 defensive tackles in Willie Henry and Elijah Qualls. I noticed on the depth chart heading into training camp, the Giants didn't have much depth behind Austin Johnson and Danny Shelton. Really, the only true nose tackle behind them was David Moa. So now they have 2 big hogs that could compete with David Moa in case there is an injury, because if that happens, you want guys who can compete. So maybe one of those 3 could make the 53-man roster if there is an injury to Danny Shelton or Austin Johnson in the preseason. So that'll be interesting to analyze. And then, of course, I'm going to go over some of my standout players in the FanFest practice that the Giants had. They started out with some drills, some walkthroughs. They did some running, and then they had, a few 7-on-7. They did some scrimmages. It was a lot of fun to watch. And the first standout player for me was Rodarius Williams. There was a point in practice where Daniel Jones was trying to throw the ball into a tight window to Darius Slayton, of course, with Kenny Golladay not participating in this. Slayton and Shepard were the top 2 receivers for Jones. I believe Kadarius Toney was off to the side as well. But, yeah, good pass breakup by Rodarius Williams in the end zone. Rodarius Williams also, I think he's had 2 interceptions in training camp so far. So he's been very impressive. And with Aaron Robinson not being able to perform yet, this is good for Rodarius Williams, who could push Isaac Yiadom for that cornerback 4 spot at the moment behind Bradbury, Jackson, and Holmes. Now, do I think Rodarius Williams will be cornerback 4? No. I think once Aaron Robinson comes back, he will be cornerback 4. But if the Giants do elect to keep 6 corners, I think Yiadom and Rodarius both make the roster. Now, the Giants traded for Yiadom last season towards the beginning of the year. I believe they traded a 6th-round pick for Isaac Yiadom. It was one of the last 2 rounds. So Yiadom and Williams are duking it out for that quarterback 5 position. I think that's the biggest battle to look at here. And it'll be interesting to see if the Giants keep 6 corners. A lot of people are saying they might only keep 5, but I'm intrigued by that battle. Isaac Yiadom, not really a press man guy, which is where the defensive scheme is shifting more towards. Rodarius Williams fits that bill a little better. He is an older rookie. I believe he's 24 years old. He'll be 25 around the time the season starts if he's not already. But good job, Rodarius Williams, at FanFest yesterday and in training camp so far. Couple wide receivers that I like, under the radar guys. One in particular that none of you will be shocked by. David Sills is the first one, and then Alex Bachman is the second. And both of these guys now have been on the roster for a year or so. David Sills was turning heads last training camp. Well, there was no preseason last year, but training camp. And Sills got hurt, was put on season-ending IR when he did not suffer a season-ending injury, so that kind of stunk for him. But I think that was a way of protecting Sills for the Giants because they knew he wasn't going to do much. But, towards the end of the season when we started using guys like Austin Mack, Dante Pettis, it made sense that David Sills could have been activated at that point. But Sills is making a huge push to make this roster. In fact, I think he will make the 53-man roster. We mentioned how he's been traveling across the country with Daniel Jones all off season. He moved in with his sister in Charlotte. Not too far from Jones's home. They were working out in Arizona together. And wherever Daniel Jones has been, David Sills has been. And this is a guy who scored 18 and 15 touchdowns in his last 2 seasons in college at West Virginia. Not to mention, Sills is also a former quarterback, so there could be ties there potentially too as well. But David Sills has emerged, in my opinion, into Daniel Jones's favorite target on this entire roster, and that includes Kenny Golladay and Sterling Shepard. So that's going to be fun to watch. Now, I'm not saying David Sills is going to be getting first-team reps. I think Sills will be a back end of the roster wide receiver. But now the question peaks itself to say, what impact will Sills have on special teams? Joe Judge, there's been rumors that he said Sills can play special teams. He's played some special teams in practice. That's going to be big. But I'm really excited for David Sills. He's a 6'4" receiver, big body type of guy, and I'm pulling for him. He's the one guy that I'm really pulling to make this roster. A couple of years ago, it was Jake Carlock because I went to school with the guy. Last year, there really wasn't anybody in particular that I was absolutely pushing for to make the roster, but this year it's David Sills, 100% David Sills. So that was fun to watch. And Alex Bachman had a nice catch in practice. This was a guy last year who he was on the practice squad for pretty much the whole season. They released him during the offseason, then brought him back. So I'm happy Bachman is back with the team. He plays a lot of pickleball with license plate guys, so there's that connection there. That's a fun sport, by the way, if you haven't played it. But yeah, Bachman's impressive. I don't think he's making this roster. I think there's just way too much wide receiver depth in front of him, but he knows all the drills. He doesn't make many mistakes. He doesn't drop passes. That reminds me, there was one play in the red zone where Mike Glennon was throwing to Sills, and he overthrew Sills just a little bit, where Sills stayed in the end zone and tried to catch it. So, it kind of looked like a drop, but it wasn't. Glennon just overthrew the pass. But Bachman made a nice catch, turned it up the field, made a couple guys miss. So, again, these weren't tackling practices, But Bachman is a guy that intrigues me to be another practice squad candidate. If there's an injury to, some of these guys like John Ross has an injury history. Sterling Shepard missed most of the first half of last season. Kenny Golladay played 5 games last year, so there are injury-prone players on this roster. And we know the issues Kadarius Toney has been having in the offseason so far. So, yeah, Bachman is a guy who could surprise some people and potentially be a practice squad candidate that could be elevated. Remember, you elevate 2 guys now, so you're going to have 55 on game day, and I think 48 activated with the 7 inactive. So, that's going to be intriguing. I'm looking forward to seeing what Bachman could do in the preseason. But David Sills is the one of these 2 guys that I really think you should keep an eye on. Another receiver, of course, is Sterling Shepard. And Sterling Shepard right now is the guy that Daniel Jones has been throwing to the most. He was a big target for Jones at FanFest. He was making a lot of plays. Weird to see him wearing his number 3 jersey. That's going to take a while for me to get used to watching. I'm used to seeing him in his number 87 jersey. But he's a guy that's going to probably lead the team in receptions this year, if I'm being honest with you. It's going to be him or Golladay. I feel like Sterling Shepard's numbers will uptick with the presence of Kenny Golladay, who could see some double coverage. I think it'll help Darius Slayton as well. It could potentially help Evan Ingram if he holds on to the football. So I think Sterling Shepard is a guy you're going to see start shifting more towards the slot, but there's a common misconception of Sterling Shepard being a slot receiver. He's more of a Z receiver, where Galladay's the X. The only true slot receiver on this roster, in my opinion, is the one we drafted 20th overall in Kadarius Toney. So, it's going to be interesting to find out how Sterling Shepard fits into the team this year. He'll more than likely be the Z receiver. So, actually, I should have said it will be more interesting to see how Darius Slayton will fit into the team, because he might be coming off the bench. He might be a rotational receiver that comes in on 3rd and long. So I'm not so sure what's going to happen with him. Golladay will be your clear X. Shepard will be the Z. I mean, Slayton's number 3, right? Slayton's number 3 behind those 2 guys, but he's not a slot guy. You can put him in the slot, or you could make Slayton the Z and Sterling the slot. I think that could be the plan that the Giants have, and then sprinkling Kadarius Toney here and there. So that could be what the Giants are looking at. I actually like that alignment a little more. And the other receiver, the 5th best receiver on this roster, in my opinion, is John Ross, 9th overall pick back in the 2017 draft. He's been dealing with injuries his whole career. He's been considered a bust by many. Giants signed him on a 1-year bargain deal for only $2.5 million, and I only think 1.5 of that is guaranteed. So John Ross is a player who's very exciting, because it looks like he is penciled in as the number 1 kickoff return specialist on the depth chart. And that's good news for him. That shows signs that he will definitely make this football team, this 53-man roster. So John Ross is exciting. He didn't have anything too flashy, but what he brings is a lot of speed. And that's been shown in training camp so far. He had a nice touchdown in training camp. I believe it was like a little slant that he just cut up the field and took to the house. But I didn't see too much of him at FanFest, but John Ross is a guy who should be our starting kickoff returner come week 1. The other option, I think, could be Corey Clement, which we'll get into the unofficial depth chart in just a few moments. But another couple players I want to discuss, that left guard position, right? So Shane Lemieux was practicing, which is good news. Now, he wasn't practicing really with the first team O-line. The first team O-line, it was a combination of Thomas at left tackle, Gates at center, Hernandez at right guard, Pert at right tackle. And then at left guard, it started with Kenny Wiggins, and then we saw some of Kyle Murphy as well, which was very interesting. I did not see Jonathan Harris practice. I saw Brett Heggie taking a lot of second-team center reps. I also saw Brett Heggie taking a few first-team center reps. Kyle Murphy and Kenny Wiggins are probably the 2 candidates fighting for that backup guard spot right now, because there is a chance the Giants only keep 8 offensive linemen. Even if they keep 9, more likely than not, they're only going to dress 8 on game day. In years past, they've only dressed 7, a swing tackle and an interior utility guy. So you like versatility on the offensive line. I think either of these 2 players, Murphy and Wiggins, can play either guard position. I think Wiggins looks slightly better than Murphy at FanFest only because of the experience. But one of those 2 could be your starting left guard in week 1 if Shane Lemieux is not ready, which I think he will be. But if Lemieux is not ready, I'd expect Kenny Wiggins to be starting at left guard week 1 for the New York Football Giants. And I do think Murphy will make this roster as well, but as a backup reserve lineman. Right now, if I had to give you an alignment, I'd go the starting 5, including Shane. Solder obviously is number 6. And then Wiggins and Murphy would be 7 and 8. And then number 9, I'd go with probably – it depends on Jonathan Harrison's health. If he's healthy, I think it'll be him. If he's not healthy, I think Brett Heggie will be the guy. I do think he will be the guy. I'm not really – I mean, Chad Slade has been mentioned. He's been with the team for a while, but he's been bumped to the practice squad. I feel like Murphy has potentially surpassed Chad Slade. Jake Burton is too new, in my opinion. So Jackson Barton, I don't see much coming from him. So that's where I feel with the left guard position and this offensive line. Other things from FanFest, of course, Evan Ingram dropped the pass that Jones probably threw a little too quick. And once Ingram dropped the pass, you saw everybody started yelling. There was a YouTube video, Bob and Carl Banks were going over highlights, and you could just see Ingram dropping the pass, and then the fans just started going after him. Now, I think there's little to none chance that Evan Ingram gets re-signed to a big contract this offseason. The Giants just don't have the money for it. They have to worry about guys like Saquon Barkley, Jabril Peppers, and potentially Daniel Jones. So I don't think Evan Ingram will be returning next year, to be quite frank. But this is a guy that has to perform this season. Usually when you're on your contract year, you perform. And this is what I hope to see from Evan Ingram. I hope to see less drops. No drops would be awesome. That's why we brought in Kyle Rudolph. He's a no-drop guy. He was off to the side yesterday. Caden Smith was getting a lot of first-team reps as well in that 12 personnel. Players and fans are really bought it with head coach Joe Judge. He led the team out. I took a video of it on the Big Blue Avenue Twitter account and the Instagram account as well. Make sure to go check that out. But Joe Judge is totally bought in. My buddy who went with me actually got to see him walking by the locker room after FanFest. So that was really cool. I believe he saw Jason Garrett and Daniel Jones as well. So he got very lucky with that. And FanFest was awesome. There was like 29,000 fans there, roughly. And the media was just so excited to see this. And there was a picture of Mike Vivolo, another content creator for True Blue NYG. He was there holding a sign saying, "In Judge, we trust." By the way, that's a multi-sport sign for the Yankees and the Giants. But yeah, I trust Joe Judge. I fully support him. You could tell that he uses an old school mentality with a newer type of school approach. A lot of people are comparing him to Bill Belichick. I don't think he is. I think there are similarities and some qualities between the two, but I think Joe Judge is Joe Judge. You can compare him to Belichick, Parcells, and Coughlin all you want. While they do have similar traits, while I do think they're all winning coaches, including Judge, I think he will be a winning football coach in this league. He's his own breed. He's his own breed, and the players love it. They buy into it. He's not for everybody, but shout out to Joe Judge. And now, at this time, we're going to analyze the unofficial depth chart for the Giants. It came out yesterday. I'm going to share my screen with you guys so that you can see. We'll start with the offense, and I'm going to kind of quickly run down and give my thoughts on everything. See what we got. So, here's the offense. Daniel Jones obviously penciled in as quarterback 1. There's really not much to talk about there. Let me remove this so you can see the full screen. Perfect. So, Cole Hikatini, that's an interesting guy. He scored a touchdown at FanFest. So he's an interesting guy that could vow for that tight end 3 spot if Rudolph is not ready for week 1. So we'll go through the whole thing, though. So from top to bottom, you can see Kenny Golladay and Darius Slayton. So Slayton is a backup right now. You can see Sterling Shepard here towards the bottom. So Golladay, Shepard, Slayton, and Ross, which makes a lot of sense. And then Tony. So Ross is ahead of Tony at the moment. I don't think that'll stay. And then David Sills. David Sills is number 6. And the Giants are rumored to keep 6 wide receivers. So some people are very surprised that Sills is already ahead of CJ Board and Austin Mack and Dante Pettis. Those are the three guys that he's in biggest competition with. I think there's one spot, potentially two, if the Giants only keep three tight ends, that is Ingram, Rudolph, and Caden Smith, they can potentially keep 7 wide receivers. But right now, if you're keeping 6 wide receivers and everyone's healthy, Sills is in competition with Board, Mack, and Pettis. And right now, according to this depth chart, Sills the fifth is ahead of all of them. So that's really cool to see. We look at the tight end position. Here's Evan Ingram. And then you got Caden Smith. So this tells me 2 tight end starters. You're probably going to see a lot of 12 personnel, despite the wide receiver depth. I think that's important, especially when there are concerns about the offensive line. Caden Smith is more of the blocking tight end who can go out and catch passes. I'd like to see Caden Smith more utilized this season. I also think the 12 personnel is installed here into this depth chart because of Kyle Rudolph. I think Rudolph will be that second tight end, and then Caden Smith will be the backup who will be, filling in sporadically for the two. Offensive line, Matt Pert, Will Hernandez, Nick Gates, Shane Lemieux, and Andrew Thomas. And then we look at the backups, Nate Solder, penciled in at both backup tackle spots, no surprise. Kenny Wiggins, Jonathan Harrison, and Chad Slade. So you see Murphy is behind Chad Slade here, but this is position depth. I don't know if this is fully player depth, right? So Chad Slade has always been a right guard. In fact, I've never seen him play left guard. I've seen him play right tackle, but Chad Slade's a guy who stuck around for a few years now, and I'm just not so sure if he's going to stick around this year. And obviously the undrafted rookies are here, Jake Burton and Brett Heggie, along with Jackson Barton, who I think Burton and Barton are for sure cuts. I think Heggie is probably a cut unless there's an injury. I think Heggie probably has the best shot of those three of retaining on the practice squad. And then Chad Slade is a potential cut for me as well. So that's the offensive line. Running back, this is where it gets interesting as well. Barkley and Booker, those are your obvious two. And then Corey Clement here at running back 3. It's surprising that he's ahead of rookie Gary Brightwell. I guess the experience factor, they brought him later on in the offseason. This is a guy who had the most receiving yards for the Eagles in the big game a few years ago. He was a big candidate. He was a big target for them in that game. But the Giants brought in Alfred Morris, who's probably only here as an insurance policy if Barkley is not ready or has a setback. In that case, I think the 3 to make the roster would be those 3. But if the Giants keep 4 running backs, I don't think Morris stays, actually. I think it's Gary Brightwell. I think it's the 6th-round rookie out of Arizona. I'm not too impressed by him. I think he's more of a special teams guy. So is he. He could also be a potential 3rd down pass-catching back. So all in all, I think Corey Clement will make this football team as the number 3 running back unless he has a bad preseason. I think Morris is only here to be an insurance policy for Barkley because he was signed very recently. Sandro Platzkummer, obviously, we got him through the International Gateway program, so he cannot be touched for another year, I believe. We can elevate him to the 53-man roster, though, but I don't think he will make that. There's too much depth ahead of him, and we did draft the running back as well. Fullback, Elijah Penny currently is ahead of Colin Gillespie, but I think Gillespie is far from out of this battle. I think Penny has an upper hand right now. Giants love Elijah Penny. He's been on the team since 2018, so that'll be intriguing. And then obviously I went over that receiver position, the tight ends right now. So with Rudolph out of the picture at the moment, the backup tight ends are Cole Hikatini and Nakia Griffin-Stewart, with Rice and John and Jake Houseman, who Houseman was just signed this week. And then here's Rudolph over here, who he'll be in the mix as a starter over Caden, I'm sure. But so that's the offense. So I'm really interested to see what happens there. The Giants have made some moves over the past few days with their offense. They've also made some moves with their defense as well, which I'm going to pull up now. And there's a couple of interesting notes here as well that I want to share with you folks as I pull up the depth chart now. So as you can see, the Giants are going with the 3-4 set with Patrick Graham, We'll start with the edge rusher position since that's on top. Lorenzo Carter is the starter. Trent Harris is currently ahead of Afadio Denibo, which is kind of surprising. I would think Denibo would be ahead of Trent Harris. I'm going to have to do some more research on Trent Harris. I believe he is a former New England Patriot and Miami Dolphins, so he does have ties to both Joe Judge and Patrick Graham. But I'm a little surprised to see him ahead of Odenibo. Odenibo is a guy I absolutely want to make this roster. When we had Levine Toilolo, there were two guys on this roster that I would be very unhappy if they were cut. That would be Afadio Denibo and Caden Smith. Those are the two players that I thought could be cut candidates that I absolutely do not want to be cut, especially Odenibo. We just signed off season. He can play the 5-tech, 3-tech, or 4-eye. He's very versatile. So I want to see him in there, whether he's on the field as an edge rusher or a down lineman in three-point stance. So the other edge rusher position is O'Shane Ximenez, currently penciled above Azeez Ojulari, obviously due to seniority. And Ojulari will have to fight for his starting role in the preseason over O'Shane Ximenez. I think eventually Ojulari will surpass Ximenez, and you'll have two Georgia Bulldogs at each edge rusher position for the Giants. And here's Nico Lalos. Nico Lalos currently listed ahead of Ellerson Smith, 4th-round pick out of Northern Iowa. Now, by no means do I think Lalos is better than Ellerson Smith, but I think Lalos actually has a better shot to make this roster than people are giving him credit for. Ryan Anderson was released this week, and then he was brought back. It was some type of a weird contract situation, but that tells me he's not as valuable as some people once thought. A lot of people thought he was a lock to make this roster. I was saying absolutely not. He's going to have to earn it. Just because they signed him as a free agent this offseason doesn't mean he's going to make it. I think Lalos showed flashes last year. He had a nice pass breakup in training camp so far, so I think he's a very intriguing prospect. I think he's ahead of Ryan Anderson. I think he's ahead of Cam Brown, who is blocked by the corner there. Yep, there you can see Cam Brown is stacked towards the back. I don't think Cam Brown has a good shot to make this roster unless they keep him for special teams purposes. He was a very valuable special teams asset last year, so I could see him sticking around for that. But those are the two edge rusher positions. We'll get into the defensive line now. Dexter Lawrence is your first defensive end, and then Leonard Williams is your defensive tackle in the 3-4 set. And then Austin Johnson listed ahead of Danny Shelton. I mean, Johnson was with the team last year, so this kind of makes sense. Both players were signed to similar deals. Johnson making slightly more money, so Johnson, who's more of a passing down defensive tackle who can stop the run. Shelton is your clear first and second down run stuffing defensive tackle. And the best part is both of these guys are only making like $2 to $3 million a year. As where if we re-signed Dalvin Tomlinson, we would have had to have paid him 11 or 12 million at minimum. And that would have prevented us from signing other key players to this defense like Kenny Golladay, this offense and defense like Kenny Golladay and Adoree Jackson. So I think that's where that comes into play. I do expect Danny Shelton to eventually leapfrog Austin Johnson, but I also wouldn't be shocked if Johnson stays here as nose tackle number 1. BJ Hill is a backup. He's a for sure guy who's going to make this roster. So there's 5 defensive linemen that I think will make it. I do think Lalos has ability to make it as the 6th defensive lineman since we just released RJ McIntosh. I'm not really concerned about David Moa or Elijah Qualls making the roster or Willie Henry. I think Nico Lalos is a guy that you could potentially keep as that second backup defensive end. He has the frame to do it. He's about 6'5", 275. So you keep Lalos, Hill, and Shelton Johnson, that duo, as your 4, other than Lawrence and Leonard Williams. So if they do keep 6, I actually think Lalos will be the 6th, which is probably something that nobody else might be telling you right now, but I'm telling you this because I saw that at FanFest yesterday. It flew under the radar, and a lot of people did not catch it, but I saw him out there on that 3-point stance. So I think Lalos has a good shot of playing here in this position behind BJ Hill on that 53-man and in preseason. and also have versatility to play here, which is something that Joe Judge loves. So we went through the line. We went through the edge rushers. Let's get through the interior linebackers now. So the middle linebacker and the will position. Blake Martinez, of course, is our number one linebacker, followed by Reggie Ragland. And then Tay Crowder is the starting will. I'm a little surprised Carter Coughlin is not penciled in as the number 2 will. The position switch could have been the reason why Devontae Downs is here, which I know a lot of people are not going to like. I do hope that Devontae Downs gets cut. I don't want to see him make this roster. But all in all, when it comes down to it, I think Martinez, Ragland, Crowder, and Coughlin will be your 4 inside linebackers. I do not think Brunson or Anderson will make the cut. So that's how I feel at the moment. I also don't think Raymond Johnson makes the team. I think he's a practice squad candidate if he doesn't get claimed. I do expect him to make some nice plays in the preseason, but that's how I currently feel as we move on to the secondary. So secondary, we have James Bradbury and Adoree Jackson as the 2 starting corners, currently backed up by Darnay Holmes and Isaac Yiadom. Makes a lot of sense because Aaron Robinson is not healthy yet. He has not participated in any training camp activities yet on the field stuff in pads. So right now it's looking like those 4, and Rodarius Williams is the cornerback 5. I'm excited to see him above Jaron Williams, a UDFA last year out of Albany, who spent the season on the practice squad. And Rodarius is also ahead of Sam Beal. I'd imagine he's ahead of Madre Harper as well, who's more of a special teams guy. I think if there is a significant injury in this secondary, I think that Harper would make the roster over a guy like Beal or Williams, but I do think the corners right now are going to be Bradbury, Jackson, Holmes, Rodarius Williams, Aaron Robinson, and Isaac Yiadom. So those are your 5. So these two, and him, plus Aaron Robinson. Actually, those are your 6. So Harper would have to, if the Giants do keep 6, Harper would be the 6th if there's an injury. And then, of course, the safeties. We have Jabril Peppers, who's on a contract year, Logan Ryan, who we just re-signed on Christmas Day of this past year. Backups are Xavier McKinney and Julian Love. And then, of course, the depth back here with Quincy Wilson, Josh Kalu, Montre Hartage, who played here last season, Chris Milton and Jordan Peppers, and then Chris Johnson, who they just signed this week. So there you have it. That's the unofficial depth chart. I'm really excited to see what's in store. And then, of course, just briefly, almost forgot about it, special teams. We have to talk about special teams. I mean, it's going to be the 3 that we all expect. Casey Kreider will be the long snapper. Graham Gano will be the kicker. And Riley Dixon will be the punter. There's not much to hide here with this. Although Ryan Santoso drilled a 45-yard field goal at FanFest, and he drilled a 54-yard field goal as well. Santoso's a guy who can drill some kickoffs. If you're looking for a kickoff specialist, there's not enough spots on an NFL roster for a position like that. But Santoso is still here for a reason. He does a good job when he is asked to. I also think Santoso could be a good punter if Dixon goes down. He's a versatility guy. Again, you like versatility. You get a guy who can play backup kicker and punter in case there's an issue with Graham Gano or Riley Dixon. And then Carson Tinker is the backup long snapper to Casey Kreider. I'd imagine now with the 16-man practice squad that Santoso and Tinker will both make it. Again, ever since 2002, the Giants have always prioritized that long snapper position with that whole trade chunk and mess. And then here, punt returner, Jabril Peppers. We saw him returning punts last year. I know a lot of people don't like it when starters are returning kicks and punts, but Tiki Barber used to do it. You can't wrap your head too much around that. Adoree Jackson is the backup, and then Tony here is the 3rd string for both. Kickoffs, it will be John Ross as the man there. I think Corey Clement could potentially join him. Right now, Peppers is listed as the 2nd string kick returner, but that will be an interesting position to monitor. So we've covered all the bases. We talked about the FanFest takeaways. We've talked about the unofficial depth chart. And now we're just going to briefly preview the preseason game against the New York Jets on Saturday night. Daniel Jones will not play. Saquon Barkley will not play. Kyle Rudolph will not play. Lorenzo Carter will not play. And I doubt Aaron Robinson will play either. I don't know about Galladay. I don't know his status. Shane Lemieux won't play as well. So that's pretty much all I've got on that. I'm looking forward to watching an actual football game against another team. The Giants will be in Cleveland next week, and then, of course, New England the week after. So, this is the most time that they're spending here in East Rutherford, New Jersey before the regular season. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Week 1 against the Denver Broncos is officially a month away. I am pumped. I hope you are too. We appreciate all the support you give us here on this channel. Make sure to give us a follow on Instagram, Twitter, and our YouTube channel at Big Blue Avenue. Hope you all have an awesome weekend. Enjoy this warm weather. Stay safe out there. Stay healthy. I'll be back with another video very, very soon. And until next time, let's go Big Blue.